Dr. Daniel Cole's hands shot out and grabbed Emily's wrist, hard enough that she dropped the chart. It hit the floor with a crack that silenced the entire trauma bay. "Don't you dare touch that patient." His voice wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was the voice of a man who had never once been told no. He leaned in close enough that she could see the contempt burning in his eyes, and he said it quietly, deliberately, like a blade pressed flat against skin. "You are nobody in this room. Get out before I have you removed by security." Every doctor froze. Every nurse looked away. Nobody moved to stop him. Nobody, except the woman whose wrist he was crushing. She didn't pull back. She didn't flinch. She looked straight at him and said, with a calm that was almost frightening, "Let go of my wrist and listen, because in 60 seconds that man on the table is going to die, and it will be your fault." If you are new here, welcome. Please subscribe to our channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The trauma bay at Harrove Medical Center had seen everything. On any given Friday night in Chicago, that room had been filled with gunshot wounds, car accidents, industrial injuries, and every kind of crisis that a city of nearly 3 million people could generate. The staff who worked there had stopped flinching at things that would have broken most people. They had learned to move fast, speak in shorthand, and trust the hierarchy. Because in a room where someone's heart could stop between one breath and the next, hierarchy wasn't arrogance, it was survival. Dr. Daniel Cole was the top of that hierarchy. He had been for 11 years. He was 46 years old, tall, with silver threading through dark hair that he kept short and neat. He wore his confidence the way other men wore cologne. You could smell it before he walked into the room. His surgical record was extraordinary. His ego was, many would argue, equally extraordinary. He had trained at Johns Hopkins. He had published in the New England Journal of Medicine 4 times. He had been featured in a Chicago Tribune profile 2 years ago under the headline, "The Man Who Doesn't Lose Patience." He had earned the right to be confident. Most people at Harrove would have told you that directly. Some of them would have added, quietly, after checking that he wasn't in earshot, that he had also earned the right to be difficult. Tonight, difficult didn't begin to cover it. The patient on the table was James Avery, Navy SEAL commander, 41 years old. He had been brought in 17 minutes ago by ambulance after collapsing at a private security consultation downtown. The paramedics had noted irregular heartbeat, labored breathing, and a blood pressure reading that made the attending nurse on intake go pale. He had no wallet, no phone. His identification had come from a military-grade bracelet on his left wrist, the kind that only men who had operated in very specific places in the world tended to wear. The trauma team had been working on him since the moment the gurney cleared the double doors. Dr. Cole was running the room. That was normal. That was how it always went when Cole was on shift. He didn't ask for input, he gave direction. He didn't invite questions, he answered them before they were asked. And the people around him had learned, over years and over countless difficult nights, that this was simply the way it was. Push another round of epi. Get me a second IV line on the left side. Someone tell me what his oxygen saturation is doing, because if that number drops below 92, I want to know immediately. 94 and holding, someone called out. That's not holding, that's drifting. Watch it. The room moved. Everyone had a job. Everyone was doing it. And in the corner near the supply cart, half turned like she was trying to take up as little space as possible, was Emily Brooks. She had been at Harrove for 3 months. Before that, almost nobody knew. She had transferred from a position at a smaller clinic in the western suburbs, according to her paperwork. She kept quiet during shift briefings. She did her work without complaint. She had the kind of face that was easy to look past, not because it was plain, but because it offered nothing to hold on to. No expression that demanded attention. No body language that asked for anything. She was simply there, doing what needed doing, and then going home. Nobody had asked many questions about Emily Brooks, because Emily Brooks had never given them a reason to. Until tonight. She had been restocking the lower cabinet when the gurney came in, and something had made her stand up. Not the noise, there was always noise in a trauma bay. Not the urgency, there was always urgency. It was something else. Something that she would have struggled to put into words if anyone had asked her, which they didn't. She moved closer to the table, not pushing, not inserting herself, just closer. And she watched. Dr. Cole was talking through his assessment. Blood pressure, cardiac rhythm, the possibility of a pulmonary embolism based on the pattern he was seeing. His team was nodding, confirming, following the logic. It was good medicine. It was textbook. It was exactly what a man of his training and experience would do in this situation. Emily's eyes moved to the patient's chest. She watched the rise and fall, watched the rhythm, watched something that wasn't quite right, a subtle asymmetry, the kind of thing you would not see unless you had trained yourself to look for it in conditions where there was no fancy equipment, no backup, no second chance. Her expression didn't change, but her right hand moved slightly, almost involuntarily, like a reflex she had spent years developing and could not fully suppress. "Excuse me," she said. Nobody heard her, or if they did, they didn't turn around. "Excuse me," she said again, louder. Dr. Marcus Webb, the second-year resident standing nearest to her, glanced over his shoulder. He was 28, earnest, still at the stage where he wanted to be liked by everyone. He gave her a quick, apologetic look that said clearly, "Not now, please. You really don't want to do this right now." Emily took a step forward. "I need someone to look at the tracheal position," she said. "I think it's deviated." That was when Dr. Cole heard her. He didn't turn all the way around. He turned just enough, a quarter rotation, slow, the way a man turns when he has been interrupted in the middle of something important, and he wants the interrupter to know that he is aware of exactly how much this is costing him. "Who is that?" he said. It wasn't really a question. "New nurse," someone muttered. "Brooks, Emily Brooks." Brooks. He said the name the way you might say the name of an item that had been misplaced on a shelf where it didn't belong. "What exactly are you telling me right now?" "The trachea," Emily said. "It looks like it's shifted to the right, and the breath sounds on the left. I don't think they're equal." Silence. Not complete silence. The monitors were still beeping, someone's gloves were still snapping, but the human silence in that room went very deep, very fast. Dr. Cole set down the instrument he was holding. He turned fully around. He looked at Emily Brooks, at her scrubs, at her name badge, at the calm, unreadable face above it, and he made a decision. "Get her out of my trauma bay, right now. I don't care who she is. Get her out." He turned back to the table. "We have a dying man in front of us, and I am not going to stand here and take a differential diagnosis from a floor nurse who has been in this hospital for what, 3 months? Marcus, tell me you have a better IV line going." "Working on it," Marcus said quietly. He did not look at Emily. Nobody looked at Emily. She didn't move. "Did I not make myself clear?" Cole said, without turning around. "You have 90 seconds, Emily said, "or he dies." The room went still. Not the kind of still that happens when someone says something dramatic. The kind of still that happens when something in the air changes. When the temperature drops 2 degrees and everyone feels it at the same time, and nobody can quite explain why. Dr. Cole turned around again. This time, very slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice dropping to a register that most people at Harrove had learned to be afraid of. "What did you just say to me?" 90 seconds, Emily said. She wasn't loud. She wasn't defiant. She was stating a fact. If that's a tension pneumothorax, and we don't decompress it now, his heart is going to shift far enough that it will stop. The trachea is already moving. The neck veins, look at the neck veins. They're distended. And if you check the blood pressure right now, it's dropped from what it was 3 minutes ago. Nobody moved. Cole's jaw was tight. The muscle along his temple was working. And then, almost against his will, it seemed, he glanced at Dr. Sandra Okafor, his senior resident, who was standing on the other side of the table with a look on her face that she was very carefully trying to keep neutral. "Sandra," he said. Sandra hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Then she reached for the pressure cuff. The number came back. Sandra looked up. Her carefully neutral expression was gone. "It's dropped 12 points since the last reading," she said quietly. The room shifted. Cole did not look at Emily. He looked at the patient. He looked at the trachea. He looked at the neck. And something moved across his face. Not an emotion exactly, more like the shadow of one. Something private and fast that was gone almost before it arrived. "Needle decompression," he said. "Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Do it now." Marcus was already moving. His hands were trained for this. His mind was trained for this. He found the position. He found the angle. And when the needle went in, the sound it made was the sound of air escaping under pressure. A small, soft rush, like a held breath finally released. The monitors changed. The patient's oxygen saturation, which had been drifting, stopped its downward slide. The blood pressure began to recover. The cardiac rhythm, which had been doing something irregular and worrying for the last 4 minutes, began to smooth. James Avery breathed. Nobody spoke. Cole stood at the head of the table with his hands at his sides. He was looking at his patient, only at his patient. His expression was the expression of a man who was doing a very precise internal calculation and not yet ready to share the result. Then, without turning around, he said, "Who taught you to read a tracheal shift at 40 feet without a stethoscope?" Emily didn't answer immediately. "Not a medical school," she said finally. Cole turned around. He looked at her for a long moment. Really looked, the way he rarely bothered to look at people. The full, careful attention of a man who was used to seeing things other people missed, now noticing for the first time that he had not been seeing this person at all. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means I learned in places where there was no equipment," Emily said, "and no second attempt." Silence again, but a different kind this time. Marcus Webb was staring at her. Sandra Okafor was staring at her. The 2 nurses on the far side of the table were staring at her. Even the respiratory technician, who had been carefully minding his own business for the last 15 minutes, had stopped and was staring. Cole said nothing for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "Stay." Emily nodded once. She moved to the left side of the table. And just like that, without ceremony, without explanation, the dynamic in that room shifted in a way that nobody would have predicted 30 minutes ago. Over the next 20 minutes, the team worked to stabilize Avery. It was good work, careful work, the kind of coordinated effort that Harrove's trauma team did well on its best nights. Cole directed, Sandra assisted, Marcus ran the secondary monitors, the 2 nurses managed the IVs in the airway, and Emily watched. She didn't push again. She didn't offer opinions. She stood at the left side of the table, and she watched with an attention that was different from the attention of the other people in the room. It was the attention of someone who had learned to read situations the way other people read words. Fast, instinctively, without effort. Because the alternative to reading them fast had, at some point in her life, been something much worse than a failed exam. Twice she said something quietly to Sandra, once about the positioning of the patient's left arm and the effect it was having on the IV flow. Once about a medication interaction she had noticed on the secondary chart. Both times Sandra checked. Both times Sandra adjusted. Neither time did she ask Emily how she knew. At the 40-minute mark, James Avery was stable, not out of danger, not by a long way. There was still the chest tube to manage and the underlying question of why a 41-year-old man in peak physical condition had collapsed in the first place. But the immediate crisis was over. His heart was beating in a rhythm that made sense. His lungs were working. His blood pressure was a number you could live with. Cole stepped back from the table. He pulled off one glove, then the other. He was looking at the monitor, but not really seeing it. His eyes had the unfocused quality of someone running through the last hour in their mind, accounting for every decision, grading every call. "Good work," he said to the room, his standard post-crisis statement. He'd said it the same way after every successful resuscitation for 11 years. Flat, professional, acknowledgement without sentiment. He started to walk toward the door. Then he stopped. He turned back, not to the patient this time, but to Emily. She was making a note on the secondary chart. She didn't look up. She had the pen moving in quick, precise strokes. The handwriting of someone who had learned to document under pressure, in limited light, on surfaces that weren't always stable. "Brooks," Cole said. She looked up. "Where did you work before this?" he asked. A pause. A very small pause, the kind that most people wouldn't notice. But Cole noticed. He was very good at noticing pauses. "Various places," Emily said. "Specifically. Trauma settings," she said. "Non-standard." Cole studied her. She looked back at him without challenge and without apology. Just steady. Just calm. The way a person looks when they have long since stopped needing other people's opinions of them to tell them who they were. "Non-standard," Cole repeated. "Yes." He looked at her for another moment. Then he said, "Make sure the chart is complete before the end of shift." And he walked out. Marcus let out a long breath. "Well," he said to nobody in particular. Sandra looked at Emily. "You want to tell me where you actually learned to do that?" she asked, not unkindly. Emily's pen kept moving. "Not tonight," she said. Sandra nodded slowly. That was apparently a sufficient answer, because she turned back to the patient and didn't ask again. The next 2 hours were the kind of sustained, grinding work that doesn't make for dramatic stories, but keeps people alive. Avery was moved to the ICU. His vitals were monitored every 15 minutes. The chest tube was managed. The cardiac team was called in to consult on the arrhythmia pattern that had appeared in the initial readings, which turned out to be stress-related and not structural, which was, everyone agreed, a significant relief. Emily was in and out of the ICU for the rest of her shift. Nobody had formally asked her to stay involved with Avery's case. It wasn't her assignment, technically, but nobody had told her to leave either. And she was quiet enough and careful enough and useful enough in the small ways that mattered that she simply continued to be there, the way she had been simply there for the last 3 months. It was during the second hour, while she was checking the drainage on Avery's chest tube, that he woke up. It was brief, just a moment of consciousness, the kind that comes and goes in the early hours after a trauma, more reflex than real awareness. His eyes opened. They focused imperfectly, then with more precision. They landed on Emily. He said nothing, but his expression, the expression of a man who was trained to read faces, who had spent years operating in environments where reading a face correctly could mean the difference between walking out and not walking out, did something that was almost recognition. A small shift in the eyes, a fractional change in the set of his jaw. Then his eyes closed again. Emily replaced the drainage bag. She noted the output on the chart. She adjusted the tube angle slightly, correcting for a kink that would have slowed the flow by morning. She did all of this without any particular show of emotion, but her hands, just for a moment, were very still. She stood at the bedside for a few seconds longer than necessary, looking at him. Looking at the face of James Avery, Commander, Naval Special Warfare, a man whose service record she would not have been able to see without a clearance level that no floor nurse at Harrove Medical Center was supposed to have. Then she picked up her chart and walked out of the room. At the nurse's station, Dr. Sandra Okafor was writing up her notes from the night. She looked up when Emily sat down across from her. There was a question on Sandra's face, had been there for hours, patient and unspoken. The question of a woman who was smart enough to know that she was missing something and disciplined enough not to push until the time was right. Emily pulled up the next chart in the queue. A 47-year-old male presenting with chest pain and shortness of breath arrived 40 minutes ago, currently in Bay 3, waiting for the cardiology consult. "What are you looking at?" Sandra asked, watching her. "Bay 3, Emily said. "The chest pain patient. Cardiology is already on it." "I know," Emily turned a page. "Have you seen his troponin trend?" Sandra frowned. It was borderline on the first draw. "The second draw came back 12 minutes ago," Emily said. "It's up." Sandra was already pulling up the screen. She scrolled to the result. Her frown deepened. "That's a significant jump," she said. "Yes," Emily said. "And his pain description, the way he described it on intake, it's not typical for a standard MI pattern." "What do you mean?" "It's more central, radiating differently, tearing quality, not pressure." Sandra stared at her. "You think it's an aortic dissection?" Sandra said slowly. Emily said nothing. She just looked at Sandra with that steady, unreadable expression. Sandra was already picking up her phone. 13 minutes later, the Bay 3 patient was on his way to a CT scanner that would confirm, in the cold language of imaging, what Emily Brooks had read in a chart and a patient's description of his own pain. Aortic dissection, type A, the kind that kills you within hours if nobody catches it, and the kind that can be repaired if someone does. The cardiology attending who took the call was a woman named Dr. Patricia Huang, who had been in medicine for 22 years and who did not rattle easily. When Sandra explained what had happened, that a floor nurse had flagged the case before the formal consult had concluded, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Get me everything she's flagged tonight." Sandra paused. "Everything?" "Everything," Patricia said. "Every chart she's touched, every note she's made. I want to see all of it." Sandra hung up and sat for a long moment, looking at Emily, who was already moving on to the next chart, the next patient, the next problem that needed solving. "Emily," she said. Emily looked up. "Who are you?" Sandra asked. It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't accusatory. It was genuinely, simply, the question of a person who had been watching something she didn't fully understand and had decided it was time to ask directly. Emily looked at her for a moment. "I'm the nurse on shift tonight," she said. "That's not what I'm asking." A pause. A long one this time. Long enough that Sandra almost took the question back, almost let it go, almost decided that she would just accept the version of this person that had been presented to her and not look for the one underneath. Then Emily said, "Ask me again sometime when we're not short 3 nurses and one of my patients is running a temperature that nobody else has checked yet." She picked up the chart and walked down the hall. Sandra watched her go. Then she looked down at her notes. Then she looked back at the hallway. Somewhere in the building, a monitor alarmed and was quickly silenced. A phone rang at the desk and was answered. A door opened somewhere and closed. The hospital kept moving, the way it always did, indifferent to the small dramas inside it, indifferent to the questions that were gathering in the air like weather. But in Bay 1, in the ICU, in a bed with a chest tube and a cardiac monitor and a blood pressure cuff cycling every 15 minutes, James Avery slept. And the rhythm on his monitor was steady, and the drainage was within normal limits. And he was alive, in a way that he very possibly would not have been, if not for the woman who had stepped forward when everyone in the room was looking the other direction. The overnight shift would be over in 4 hours. In those 4 hours, 3 more things would happen that nobody who worked at Harrove Medical Center would have predicted at the start of the evening. The first would be something Sandra found in a routine file check that would make her sit very still at her desk for almost 2 full minutes. The second would be a phone call that came in on a line that was not supposed to receive outside calls. A secure line, the kind of line that Harrove did not officially acknowledge having, routed through a system that most of the staff didn't know existed. And the third would arrive on 4 legs, in the middle of the corridor outside the ICU, and it would walk past every person in that hallway as though they were furniture. And it would stop, right in front of Emily Brooks. The thing about a secret is that it has weight. You can't see it, can't measure it, but the people who are carrying one, the real ones, the heavy ones, they move differently, they stand differently, they take up space in a room in a way that doesn't match the story they've told you about themselves. Sandra Okafor had been in medicine for 14 years. She had learned, the hard way and more than once, to trust the things she felt in her chest before her brain had finished forming the sentence. And what she felt right now, sitting at the nurse's station at 2:17 in the morning, staring at a personnel file that she should not have been able to access this easily, was the particular, specific feeling of a floor dropping out from under her feet. The file on her screen was Emily Brooks's employment record. Standard stuff, transfer date, certifications, prior facility listed as Westfield Community Clinic in Oak Park. Sandra had pulled it out of habit, the same low-grade professional curiosity that made her a good doctor. She'd expected to find nothing unusual. What she found instead was a gap. Not a small gap. Not a year off. Not a leave of absence with a polite explanation. A gap of 11 years between Emily Brooks's nursing degree, issued by the University of Illinois in 2006, and her first recorded civilian employment in 2017. 11 years. No employer listed, no explanation. Just a blank space where more than a decade of a person's life should have been. Sandra sat with that for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and called the one person at Harrove who she trusted to tell her if she was overreacting. Doctor. Patricia Huang answered on the second ring, which meant she was still awake, which meant she was either working late or the aortic dissection case from Bay 3 had been more complicated than anticipated. The Bay 3 patient is in surgery, Patricia said, before Sandra could speak. Type A dissection, you called it right. Or rather, your floor nurse called it right. A pause. Which is actually why I'm still here. Talk to me about Emily Brooks. Sandra looked at the gap in the file. How much do you know? She asked. Less than I want to, Patricia said, but I made some calls. What kind of calls? The kind, Patricia said carefully, that you make when a floor nurse correctly identifies two critical diagnoses in a single shift using pattern recognition that isn't taught in any civilian nursing program I've ever heard of. Sandra felt the floor drop a little further. And nobody called me back, Patricia said, which in my experience means someone will call me back. It just won't be the person I originally called. Sandra stared at the blank space in the file. She has an 11-year gap, she said. Silence on the other end. Then, where is she right now? ICU, checking on Avery. Another silence, longer this time. Sandra, Patricia said quietly, don't make a big thing of this tonight. Just watch her. The call ended. Sandra set down her phone. She looked down the hallway toward the ICU, where through the long window she could see the shape of Emily Brooks standing at Avery's bedside, her back to the glass, perfectly still. Watching was exactly what Sandra intended to do. At 2:31 in the morning, James Avery woke up for the second time. This time it wasn't a flicker. This time his eyes opened fully and stayed open. And the focus that came into them was sharp and immediate in a way that was almost startling. The focus of a man who had trained himself to go from unconscious to fully operational in the span of a single breath. His body tried to move before his mind caught up with where he was, and the chest tube reminded him with a precision that left him no room for argument. He made a sound, low, controlled, the kind of sound a man makes when he has decided he is allowed exactly that much and no more. Emily was at his side before the monitor had a chance to alarm. Don't move, she said, not loudly. You have a chest tube on the left side. Your right lung is intact. You're at Harrove Medical, Chicago. Avery looked at her. His breathing steadied. His eyes moved across her face the way they had before. That same quality of recognition that wasn't quite recognition. that careful reading of a person that went deeper than features or expressions. "What happened?" he said. His voice was rough from the tube that had been down his throat. "Tension pneumothorax," Emily said. "Your left lung collapsed. We decompressed it. You also have a cardiac arrhythmia that the team is monitoring. It's stress-related, not structural. You're stable." Avery absorbed this. "How long was I down?" "Approximately 8 minutes before EMS arrived. Another 19 before you were stabilized here." He was quiet for a moment. "Who caught it?" Emily adjusted the drainage line without answering. "The pneumothorax," Avery said. His eyes didn't leave her. "Who caught it?" "The team," Emily said. Avery looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that a man gives when he knows he is being given a partial answer and is deciding whether to accept it. In his experience, partial answers usually meant something more important was being left unsaid. "You're a nurse," he said finally. "Yes." "Here." "Yes." He looked at the ceiling, then back at her. "How long?" 3 months. Something moved across his face. "Before that?" Emily reached for his chart. "You need to rest, Commander." The word landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Avery went very still. The monitors kept their rhythm. The drainage line kept its slow, steady drip. And James Avery, who had operated in conditions that would have broken most people, lay in his bed and looked at the nurse who had just used his rank. The rank that was not on any paperwork in this hospital. The rank that his intake bracelet coded in a way that required a specific clearance to read, and said nothing. Emily closed the chart. "I'll send the resident to check on you in 20 minutes, she said. Her voice was exactly what it had been for the entire conversation. Professional, steady, revealing nothing. She was almost to the door when he spoke again. "Fox Actual," he said. Emily stopped. She did not turn around. She stood with her back to him for just a moment, just long enough that if you were watching from the corridor, you might not have noticed it at all, might have read it as nothing more than a slight pause in the middle of a long shift. Then she pushed through the door and was gone. Avery stared at the ceiling. His heart rate, according to the monitor above his head, had increased by 7 beats per minute. He was aware of this. He was aware of a great many things, including the fact that he was lying in a hospital bed in Chicago with a chest tube and a cardiac monitor, when 3 days ago he had been sitting in a debrief room in Virginia, and that the woman who had just walked out of his room was someone he was not supposed to know anything about. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep. At 3:04 in the morning, the call came in. It came in on the administrative line, the one that routed through the hospital's main switchboard, the one that was supposed to be closed to external calls after midnight, except for direct patient inquiries. The overnight desk coordinator, a 23-year-old named Tyler, who had been working this shift for 6 weeks and was still finding his footing, picked it up on the third ring. "Harrove Medical Center, how can I need to speak with whoever is managing the care of a patient admitted tonight under the name Avery," the voice on the other end said. It was a man's voice, calm, very, very specific about what it wanted. Tyler frowned. "I can connect you with the ICU." "I don't need the ICU," the voice said. "I need the name of the medical staff member who made the initial diagnosis on this patient, the one who identified the pneumothorax." Tyler blinked. I'm not sure I can give out staff information." "Son," the voice said, and there was something in the way he said it, not unkind, just utterly certain. "You can connect me to whoever is making decisions in that building right now, or you can take my number and have them call me back in the next 4 minutes. Those are your options." Tyler took the number. He sat with it for a moment. Then he walked it down to the ICU nurses station, where Sandra Okafor was still at her desk, still thinking about an 11-year gap in a personnel file. She looked at the number. She looked at the area code. It was a Virginia number, a specific part of Virginia, a zip code that she happened to know, The way people who have been practicing medicine long enough in places adjacent to the government tend to accumulate small, specific pieces of knowledge was associated with a particular cluster of federal buildings that did not appear on commercial maps. She picked up the phone. At 3:22 in the morning, Dr. Daniel Cole arrived back on the floor. Nobody had called him. That was the thing that Marcus Webb noticed first. Nobody had paged him. Nobody had sent him a message. He had simply appeared, still in his street clothes rather than scrubs, which meant he had left the building and come back, which meant something had pulled him back that was not a clinical emergency. He went directly to the ICU nurses station. Sandra wasn't there. Her notes were. Her coffee cup was. Her phone was turned face down on the desk. All the signs of someone who had stepped away quickly and expected to return quickly. Cole stood at the desk for a moment. He looked at the notes. He did not read them. He was not the kind of man who read other people's notes without permission, whatever else he was. But he saw the number written at the top of the most recent page, and he saw the area code, and something in his face changed in a way that Marcus, watching from the corridor, could not quite name. Cole looked up. He saw Marcus watching him. "Where's Brooks?" he said. "Break room, I think," Marcus said. "Maybe. She." "Get her," Cole said. Marcus went. He found Emily in the break room, not on break. She was standing at the counter with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, looking at nothing in particular, with the expression of a person who is doing a great deal of thinking in a very small space. "Dr. Cole wants you," Marcus said. Emily picked up the coffee. She took one sip. She set it back down. "Of course he does," she said. Marcus hesitated. He was 28, in earnest, and still at the stage where he thought if he asked the right question at the right moment, people would tell him the truth. "Emily," he said, "what's going on?" She looked at him. For a moment, just a moment, the carefully maintained neutrality slipped, and Marcus saw something underneath it. Not fear, not quite. Something more like the expression of a person who had planned very carefully for a long time to be invisible, and was watching all of those plans come undone faster than they'd been built. Then the neutrality was back. "Let's go find out," she said. She walked past him into the corridor. Cole was standing outside the ICU when she came around the corner. Sandra was back at the station, on the phone, her voice too low to make out. Between them, between Cole on one side and Sandra on the other, was a hallway, and in that hallway was a quality of tension that Marcus could physically feel when he walked into it. Cole looked at Emily. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to answer me directly." "All right," Emily said. "Your prior employment," he said, "the 11 years that aren't on your file." Emily said nothing. "The call that just came in," Cole said, "from a number in Virginia that Sandra is still on the phone with. Whoever is on that line is asking questions about you, specifically. Not about the patient, not about protocol, about you." He paused. "So I'm going to ask you one more time. Who are you?" Sandra ended the call. She set down the phone. She walked over to where they were standing with the expression of a woman who had just been told something that had rearranged several things inside her mind and was still in the process of rearranging them. "His name is Admiral Thomas Reyes," Sandra said. "The man on the phone. He wouldn't tell me his exact title, but the extension he called from routes through Naval Special Warfare Command." Cole stared at her. "Why is Naval Special Warfare Command calling a Chicago hospital at 3 in the morning?" Sandra looked at Emily. "They're not calling about the patient," Sandra said quietly. "They're calling about her." The hallway was very still. Emily stood between them with her coffee cup in her hand and her face giving away nothing at all, and for a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Marcus Webb, from slightly behind and to the left of everyone, said, "Is someone going to explain what's happening? Because I have been standing here for 5 minutes and I feel like I'm missing the entire—" "Yes," Emily said. Everyone looked at her. "Yes," she said again, To Cole this time. "I'll explain. Not all of it, but enough." She set down the coffee cup on the nearest surface. She turned to face him fully, the way she had turned to face him in the trauma bay hours ago. Square, direct, unhurried. The posture of someone who has nothing to prove and nothing to hide, because both of those things require caring what other people think. And she had stopped doing that a long time ago. "I served for 11 years, special operations, medical support and field surgery, in environments that didn't allow for backup or evacuation. I left the service in 2017. I went back to civilian nursing because I wanted to be done with all of it." A pause. "I am very clearly not done with it." Cole stared at her. "Special operations. Yes. You were what, a combat medic?" "I was a combat medical commander," Emily said, "attached to SEAL team operations. I ran field surgical units in 3 different theaters. I was responsible for the lives of the men on those teams and for any casualties they brought in, under conditions that—" She stopped. She started again. The conditions weren't good. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence from the ones that had come before. Cole's jaw was working, not with anger this time, with something else. The precise internal recalibration of a man who has held a very specific opinion of someone and has just been presented with information that requires that opinion to be completely rebuilt from the foundation. "Why didn't you say anything?" he said finally. It wasn't an accusation. It was a genuine question, and that, the genuine quality of it, was somehow the most surprising thing he had said all night. "Because I'm a nurse," Emily said. "That's what I am here. That's what I chose to be." "You could have been—" "I know what I could have been," she said, and there was something in her voice then, not sharpness, not anger, but a kind of weight. A weight that said, "I know. I have always known. I have thought about it more than you can imagine, and I made my decision, and it is mine. I made a choice. This is what I chose." Cole looked at her for a long moment. The arrogance that had been in his face earlier in the night, the contempt that had been so easy to read when he had grabbed her wrist, when he had told her to get out of his trauma bay, was gone. In its place was something rarer in a man like Daniel Cole, something that looked very much like respect in the process of being born. "The patient in Bay 3, he said quietly. "The dissection. Borderline troponin with a central, tearing pain pattern," Emily said. "It's a textbook presentation if you know what textbook to read." "And Avery. Asymmetric chest expansion, tracheal deviation, neck vein distension," she said. "Classic triad. I've seen it more times than I want to count." Cole nodded slowly. Then he said something that Marcus Webb would later describe to every colleague he had for the next 5 years as the most surprising thing he had ever heard Daniel Cole say. "I owe you an apology," Cole said. Emily looked at him. "In the trauma bay," he said, "my hand on your wrist, that was not acceptable, for any reason." He paused. The words were not easy for him. You could see that. You could see how far he was reaching for them, how unfamiliar the shape of them was in his mouth. "And dismissing your assessment before I evaluated it, that was bad medicine." The hallway was completely quiet. "It was," Emily said simply. Cole almost smiled. The ghost of one, there for a fraction of a second, and then gone. "Will you stay involved with Avery's case?" he asked. "Formally, I'll have Sandra add you to the care team." Emily was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that isn't hesitation, but is something more like a person checking something internal, some standard or principle or private requirement before they agree to something. "Yes," she said. "Good," Cole said. He looked at Sandra. "Get Reyes on the phone for me. I'll take it in my office." Sandra nodded. Cole walked away down the corridor. Marcus stared after him. "Did Cole just apologize?" Marcus whispered. "He did," Sandra said. "To a nurse, She looked at it for long enough that it became clear she knew it, Not from the call tonight, but from before. From somewhere in those 11 years that didn't exist in a personnel file. She put the phone in her pocket. "I'll call him," she said, after rounds. She walked back toward the ICU, and that was when they heard it. Not an alarm. There were no alarms. Not a crash, not a shout, not any of the sounds that normally signaled a crisis in this building. Just a sound from the corridor that none of them could immediately identify. A steady, rhythmic sound, a sound with weight and purpose, coming from around the corner of the east hallway. Marcus heard it first. He turned. Sandra turned. They looked toward the east corridor, and then it appeared. A Belgian Malinois, military working dog. Full tactical vest, olive green, with markings that were not decorative. Moving down the corridor with the focused, deliberate certainty of an animal that had been trained to go exactly where it intended to go, and had no interest in any of the people standing in its way. A security officer appeared around the corner behind it, breathing hard, holding a leash that had gone slack because the dog was not pulling, was not straining, was not doing any of the things a dog on a leash was supposed to do. It was simply walking, purposefully, as if it had been here before, as if it knew exactly where it was going. The dog turned left at the ICU. It walked down the corridor. It walked past the nurse's station without looking at it, past the supply room door, past the chair where a family member had fallen asleep 2 hours ago and now jerked awake to stare. It stopped in front of Emily Brooks, who had turned around, who was standing completely still, who was looking at the dog with an expression that was not surprise, that was not confusion. That was the expression of someone who sees something from a past they have very carefully left behind, arriving in a present they had tried to make completely different. The dog lowered its head. It dropped something at her feet, a combat identification armband. Olive drab webbing, embroidered in black, with a call sign that no civilian in this building would have recognized. But Sandra saw it, and Marcus saw it, and Emily looked down at it for a very long moment. Then she crouched down. She picked it up. She turned it over in her hands. "That's mine," she said. Her voice was very quiet. But the corridor was very quiet too, so every person in it heard her perfectly. The dog sat down. It looked up at her, and in the doorway of the ICU, visible through the long window, James Avery had pushed himself up on one elbow, and he was watching. And for the first time since he had been brought through those double doors, unconscious and failing, there was something on his face that was not pain. There was recognition. There was relief. There was the look of a man who had been found by someone he had thought was gone forever, and who was not yet sure whether that was the best thing that had happened to him tonight or the most complicated. Emily stood up. She was still holding the armband. She did not put it on. Not yet. The armband sat on the counter of the nurse's station like something radioactive. Nobody touched it. Nobody suggested moving it. It just sat there, olive drab and worn at the edges, with its embroidered call sign facing up. Fox Actual. While the people around it tried to decide what exactly they were supposed to do with the fact that the quietest person in their hospital was apparently someone the United States military had been looking for hard enough to send a dog. The security officer, whose name badge read Dominguez, had finally gotten his breath back. He was standing 6 feet from the dog, which had not moved from Emily's side since dropping the armband, and he was looking between the dog and Emily and the armband with the expression of a man who had planned on a quiet, overnight shift and was now significantly reconsidering his life choices. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I need to understand how a military working dog got through our east entrance at 3:40 in the morning, because I have watched the footage twice and I genuinely cannot—" "Who brought him?" Emily said. She was not looking at Dominguez. She was looking at the dog. "That's what I'm trying to—" "Dominguez." Her voice was not sharp. It was simply precise. The voice of a person who has given orders in loud, chaotic places and learned to make each word land cleanly regardless of the noise around it. Who was on the other end of the leash when he came through the door? Dominguez hesitated. A man in civilian clothes. No ID presented. He told the entrance desk he was here for a patient consultation, and then the dog just went, and I couldn't stop it without. He glanced at the animal, which was 70 pounds of disciplined, focused attention. Without making a situation. What did the man look like? Emily asked. 50s, gray at the temples, very. Dominguez paused, searching for the word. Very calm about everything. Emily was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she said, "Where is he now?" "Waiting room, East Wing." She picked up the armband. She put it in the pocket of her scrubs. She looked at the dog and said one word, very quietly, in a tone that was clearly not hospital appropriate and clearly also not the first time she had used it. "Stay." The dog stayed. She walked toward the East Wing. At 3:47 in the morning, Marcus Webb made a decision that he would later describe as either the bravest or the most professionally inadvisable thing he had ever done, depending on who was asking. He followed her. Not because he had been told to, not because it was his job, but because he was 28 years old and had spent the last 6 hours watching a woman systematically rewrite everything he thought he knew about competence and identity and what a person could be when no one was paying attention. And he was not capable of standing at the nurse's station and waiting to find out how this ended. Sandra saw him go. She said nothing. She picked up her own phone and dialed Cole's extension. "She's going to the East waiting room," Sandra said when he picked up. "There's a man there, civilian clothes. He came in with the dog." A pause on Cole's end. "I'll be there in 2 minutes," he said. "Daniel." Sandra almost never used his first name, he noticed. "Let her do this her way." A longer pause. 2 minutes, he said again, and hung up. The East waiting room was empty except for one man. He was exactly as Dominguez had described. 50s, gray at the temples, civilian clothes that fit the way clothes fit on a person who has spent so long in uniform that their body arranges itself differently. A little too straight, a little too economical. He was sitting in one of the plastic chairs with his hands on his knees and his eyes on the door. And when Emily came through it, he stood up. Not quickly, not with surprise, with the unhurried certainty of a man who had known she was coming. "Commander," he said. "I'm not a commander anymore, Admiral," Emily said. Admiral Thomas Reyes looked at her for a moment. He had a face that had been used hard and kept its shape anyway. The face of a man who had made decisions that cost him sleep and made them anyway because someone had to. His eyes were the kind of tired that isn't fixed by rest. "No," he said. "I suppose you're not." He glanced at her scrubs, at the name badge. "How long have you been here?" 3 months. "I know how long you've been here," he said. "I meant tonight. How long have you been in this building tonight?" "Since 7. He nodded. "Avery stable?" "For now," Emily said. "He has a chest tube and a cardiac monitor and a consultation with cardiology scheduled for 8 a.m. He should make a full recovery if nothing else presents." Reyes absorbed this. "He didn't know you were here," he said. "In Chicago, in this hospital. That wasn't arranged." "I know," Emily said. "I know it wasn't. His collapse was genuine. The security consultation." "I know," she said again. Reyes looked at her. He looked at her the way people look at someone they have known for a long time, through things that would be difficult to explain to anyone who wasn't there, with a familiarity that was complicated by something else, something that, in another context, might have been guilt. "Emily," he said, and it was a different word than everything else he'd said. Not a rank, not a title, not the careful professional address of a superior officer. Just a name. Just her name, said by someone who was aware of what it cost to say it that way, in this room, at this hour. "I need to ask you something." "You need to ask me to come back," she said. He didn't deny it. "I left," Emily said. "I know you left. I left because I was done, she said. The word done had a specific weight when she said it. Not the weight of exhaustion, though that was in there too, but the weight of something more deliberate. A door closed and locked from the inside. I was done with losing people I couldn't save. And I was done with the debrief rooms. And I was done with the version of myself that I was becoming in those environments. I left because I needed to be a person again. Just a person. Not a rank, not a call sign, not a function. Reyes was quiet. And I came here, she said, and I became a nurse, a floor nurse. I take blood pressure readings, and I restock supply carts, and I watch over people. And I do it without anyone dying because I was 3 miles from the nearest surgical facility and the helicopter got shot down. Her voice didn't break. It didn't need to. The weight of what she was saying was entirely in the words, not the delivery. That is what I chose, and I chose it deliberately, and I would like you to respect it. Reyes looked at the floor. Then he looked back up at her. I do respect it, he said. I want you to know that. What you built here, the discipline to do this, to step back from everything you were. He stopped, shook his head slightly. I respect it more than I can tell you. But, Emily said, but Avery being here tonight isn't a coincidence, Reyes said, even if it feels like one. And I think you know that. Emily said nothing, which was, they both understood, its own kind of answer. There are things happening, Reyes said carefully, that I cannot explain to you in a waiting room in the middle of the night. Things that involve Avery's team, his last operation, and the reason he was in Chicago for a private security consultation when his official leave didn't start until Thursday. He paused. He was here to find you, Emily. The words fell into the room and stayed there. He was here to find me, she repeated, before the collapse. That was his secondary objective. Reyes looked at her steadily. He knew where you were. He'd known for about 6 weeks. He was going to make contact tomorrow. Through civilian channels, quietly, nothing that would compromise your position here. Emily's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. Something that moved fast and deep, like a current beneath still water. Why? She said. Because 3 members of his team are compromised, Reyes said, and he needed someone he trusted with his life to help him figure out who. The room was completely quiet. Then Emily said, he trusted me with his life tonight in a rather more literal sense than either of us planned for. Despite everything, despite the hour and the weight of the conversation, and everything that was clearly sitting just beneath the surface of both of them, Reyes almost smiled. He did, he said, and you delivered. As you always did. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she put her hand in the pocket of her scrubs. She felt the armband there, the worn webbing, the embroidered call sign. She didn't take it out. She just held it. I'll finish my shift, she said, and I'll go see him. Reyes nodded. That's all I'm asking. No, it isn't, Emily said, but it's all I'm agreeing to right now. She turned and walked out of the room. Cole was in the corridor when she came through the door. He had kept his word. He'd given her the room. He was standing 20 feet away with his arms crossed and the expression of a man who had been standing there thinking very hard about what he was and was not entitled to know. Emily stopped when she saw him. He uncrossed his arms. Admiral, he said. Former patient, Emily said evenly. Cole looked at her. Come on, Brooks. Former colleague, she amended. Try again. She looked at him. He looked back. There was something different in the way they stood now. Not the confrontation of the trauma bay. Not the careful, professional distance of the last few hours. Something more direct. More honest. The thing that happens between 2 people who have both shown the other something real about themselves over the course of a very long, very pressured night. He wants me to go back, Emily said. Cole was quiet. To what I was before, she said, or something like it. And? She looked at the floor for a moment, just a moment. And I told him I'd finish my shift, she said. Cole nodded slowly. For what it's worth, he said, and then stopped. He seemed to reconsider something. He started again. For what it's worth, what you did tonight, both diagnoses, the management in the ICU, the way you handled the team, that's not something you leave behind. Whatever you are here, whatever you chose to be, what you are is also still what you were. That doesn't go away. Emily looked at him. That's not as comforting as you think it is, she said. Cole blinked. Then something crossed his face, something that looked, unexpectedly, like understanding. No, he said quietly. I suppose it isn't. They stood in the corridor for a moment, the two of them, in the particular silence of people who have arrived at a kind of mutual honesty that neither of them had been expecting at the start of the evening. Then Emily's pager went off. She looked at it. Her face changed. Avery, she said, and she was already moving. At 4:09 in the morning, James Avery's cardiac monitor alarmed for the second time. The arrhythmia that the cardiology team had flagged as stress-related had returned, but it wasn't the same pattern as before. Sandra was at the bedside when Emily came through the door, and the look on Sandra's face was the look of someone who has been watching a number change in a direction it should not be changing and is calculating options very quickly. It started 4 minutes ago, Sandra said. VTAC, 6-second run, resolved, then another one. Rate is climbing. Emily was already at the bedside. She looked at the monitor. She looked at Avery, who was awake and watching her with the specific, controlled attention of a man who has been in enough bad situations to understand that the right response to a bad situation is not panic. How are you feeling? Emily asked him. Like my heart is doing something it shouldn't be doing, Avery said. That's accurate, Emily said. She looked at the rhythm strip. She looked at the pattern. Something moved behind her eyes. That same quality of recognition, that deep pattern reading that had no name in any textbook. Sandra, when was his last potassium level? On admit, 4.1. In magnesium? Sandra paused. Not checked separately. Emily looked at her. Check it now, and pull the medication list. Everything he was given in the last 4 hours. I want to see the sequence. Sandra moved. Avery watched Emily. Talk to me, he said. Some arrhythmias, Emily said, her eyes still on the monitor, that look like stress response are actually electrolyte mediated, especially in a patient who has been physically depleted over an extended period. She glanced at him. How long were you in the field before you came to Chicago? He was quiet for exactly the length of time it takes a man to decide how much he's going to say. 18 days, he said. Eating regularly? Another pause, shorter. Adequately. That means no, Emily said. Avery said nothing. Sleeping? Adequately. Also no. She reached for the secondary chart. How long has the arrhythmia been happening? Not tonight, before. The monitor alarmed again. Another run. 7 seconds. Sandra was back at the door with a lab order already sent, the expression on her face tight and careful. Avery, Emily said. Her voice was steady. How long? 10 days, he said. Maybe 12. Did you report it? The silence that answered her said everything. You didn't report it, she said. I had an operation to finish, he said. Emily looked at him. The look was not angry. She did not have the luxury of angry right now, and besides, she knew this particular answer. She had heard it before, from men like him, in conditions that made this ICU look like a spa. Men who did not stop because stopping meant someone else carried the weight, and carrying the weight was simply what they did. I know, she said. I know you did. She turned to Sandra. I want magnesium replacement started now. 2 grams IV over 15 minutes. And get cardiology on the phone. I know it's 4 in the morning. I don't care. Cole is already calling, Sandra said. Emily nodded. She pulled a chair to Avery's bedside, which was not standard procedure, and she sat in it, which was also not standard procedure, and she said, I'm staying here until this resolves, so you're going to talk to me. Avery looked at her. About what? About why you came to Chicago, she said. About what Reyes told you. About the 3 people on your team. She met his eyes. About what's actually going on. The monitor ran another brief alarm. 4 seconds. Resolved. Avery looked at the ceiling, then back at her. You talked to Reyes, he said. He found me first, Emily said. 20 minutes ago. What did he tell you? That you were here for a private security consultation, and that finding me was your secondary objective. She paused. And that 3 members of your team are compromised. Avery was quiet. The monitor ran clean for 30 seconds. 40. 50. The magnesium was going in. Sandra had stepped out to reach cardiology. They were, for this brief window, alone in the room. His name is Carter, Avery said finally. Michael Carter, 12-year veteran, Team 6, 2 deployments with me, 1 with Bravo Element. He's been feeding information for approximately 8 months. We don't know to whom. Emily absorbed this without visible reaction. How do you know? Because 4 of our extraction points in the last 8 months have been compromised within 24 hours of being designated, Avery said. The only person in the communication chain for all 4 was Carter. And the other 2? Suspected, not confirmed. His jaw tightened. I need someone on the outside to run analysis. Someone who understands the operational patterns, who can look at the communication logs without a clearance trail that Carter might be watching. He paused. I need someone who doesn't exist on paper inside the command structure. The room was very still. Someone like a nurse, Emily said. Someone like Fox Actual, Avery said quietly. The monitor beeped steadily. Clean, regular. The magnesium was doing its work. Emily sat with her hands in her lap and the armband in her pocket and the weight of a decision she had been trying not to make, pressing down on her in the specific way that things you try not to think about always eventually demand your attention. I left for a reason, she said. I know you did. People died, she said. The words were plain. They were not dramatized, not softened. People died because I was there, and people died because I wasn't there, and eventually I could not determine which was worse. So I stopped being there. I know, Avery said. You lost people too, she said. It wasn't a question. I lose people every time, he said. That doesn't change. You know that. You always knew that. He looked at her. You also know that the ones you save are real as the ones you lose. And you saved every man on my team who came off the field alive. Every one, Emily. I counted them. She looked at him. Something moved across her face. Something that had been behind the wall for 3 months, or for years, or for longer than she could honestly account for. Something that the careful, quiet discipline of being nobody had been keeping in its place. She looked down. She looked at her hands. I'll look at the logs, she said quietly. That's all I'm agreeing to. I'll look at the logs and I'll tell you what I see. Avery closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the relief in them was not the relief of a military operation proceeding on schedule. It was the relief of a person who has been carrying something alone for too long and has just been offered the possibility of not carrying it alone anymore. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, Emily said. Carter is still on your team. I know, and if he finds out you're in a civilian hospital in Chicago with a compromised identity, he will know something went wrong. I know that too. Which means, Emily said, her voice shifting into a register that Marcus Webb, appearing quietly in the doorway at that exact moment, would later describe as the voice of someone who has just picked up a weapon they set down years ago and found that they still know how to hold it. We need to control what information leaves this building, starting now. She stood up from the chair. She turned around. Marcus was in the doorway. Behind him, Cole. Behind Cole, Sandra. All 3 of them had the expression of people who had arrived at different times and for different reasons and had all ended up at the same place, listening to the same thing, understanding for the first time the full shape of what they were standing in the middle of. Emily looked at all three of them. "Avery's real name doesn't leave this floor," she said. It was not a request. It was not harsh. It was simply the voice of someone who understood exactly what the stakes were and was not going to pretend otherwise. "His military rank doesn't leave this floor. Whoever asks, family, administration, anyone, he is a private patient admitted under emergency circumstances, identity pending verification." That is the story. Nobody argued. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you need from me?" Emily looked at him. And in that moment, in that specific moment, at 4:23 in the morning, in a hospital room in Chicago, with a worn armband in her pocket and a dying man's trust in her hands, and a decision she had tried not to make already made, something settled in her face. Not hardness, not the armor she had been wearing for the last 3 months. Something older than armor. Something that had been there before the armor and would be there after. "I need the conference room on the 3rd floor," she said. "I need a secure laptop, and I need everyone in this hallway to understand that what happens next does not leave this building." Cole nodded once. "Done," he said. And for the second time that night, the second time in this building, in front of these people, the balance of authority in the room shifted. Not dramatically, not with announcement. It simply moved, the way the tide moves, the way things move when they are returning to where they were always meant to be. Dr. Daniel Cole, who had told this woman to get out of his trauma bay 8 hours ago, stepped to the side of the hallway, and Emily Brooks, Fox Actual, walked through. The 3rd floor conference room at Harrove Medical Center was not designed for what it was being used for at 4:31 in the morning. It had a long table, 8 chairs, a whiteboard with last Tuesday's budget meeting still on it, and a laptop that Sandra had pulled from the administrative office with a look on her face that said she was aware she was doing something that HR would have questions about and had decided she didn't care. Emily sat down at the table. She opened the laptop. She looked at the screen for a moment, the way a person looks at a door they have been standing on the wrong side of for a long time, measuring the distance between where they are and where the door leads, calculating what it will cost to walk through it again. Then she started typing. Cole stood against the wall with his arms crossed. He had sent Marcus back to the floor. Someone had to actually run the ICU, and Marcus, whatever his feelings about missing this, was the best option available. Sandra had stayed. She was at the far end of the table, not trying to read Emily's screen, not asking questions, just present in the way that a person can be present when they have decided their job right now is to be a steady thing in an unsteady room. Reyes had come up from the East Wing. He was sitting across from Emily. He had a phone on the table in front of him that he had not touched since sitting down. His hands were folded, and his posture was the posture of a man exercising a great deal of patience that he had developed over a long career of situations that required it. Nobody spoke for 4 minutes. Then Emily said, "The communication logs, where are they stored?" "Secure server, Naval Special Warfare Command," Reyes said. "I can get you read access from here if you give me the machine ID." Emily read him the number from the bottom of the laptop. Reyes typed something on his phone. 30 seconds later, Emily's screen changed. She leaned forward. Cole watched her face as she read. He was not a man who watched people's faces as a habit. He was a man who watched data, results, outcomes. But Emily's face as she moved through the logs was something he found himself unable to look away from. Because what was on it was not the careful, neutral expression she had been maintaining all night. What was on it was pure, concentrated intelligence. The face of a person reading something at a speed and depth that most people simply did not have, finding patterns in information the way other people find shapes in clouds, except this was not imagination. This was architecture. This was the way a mind worked that had been trained on the highest stakes pattern recognition on Earth. She didn't speak. She scrolled. She stopped. She went back. She compared two things that were pages apart and held them against each other in her mind. She made a sound that was not quite a word, a small, low sound, the sound of someone whose suspicion has just been confirmed. "What?" Cole said. "Give me a minute," Emily said. Cole gave her two. "It's not Carter," Emily said. The room went still. Reyes straightened. "What?" "Carter's in the logs," Emily said. "He's in the communication chain for all 4 compromised extraction points. But look at the timing." She turned the screen toward Reyes, pointing at something. "He reports into the chain at 1700 hours on each of these dates. The compromise happens between 1400 and 1500 hours. He's reporting after the fact. He's not the source. He's downstream." Reyes stared at the screen. His jaw was tight. "If Carter isn't the source, then whoever is the source is inside the chain above him," Emily said. "And they are very good at making Carter look like the problem." The silence in the room had a different quality now. Not the silence of people waiting for information. The silence of people who have just received information that changes the shape of everything they thought they understood. "Who's above Carter in this chain?" Sandra asked quietly from the far end of the table. Reyes did not answer immediately. He looked at Emily. Emily looked back at him. "Tom," she said. The name was quiet. It was also the first time she had used his first name, which Cole noted, which Sandra noted, which Reyes himself clearly felt. "Who's above Carter?" Reyes picked up his phone. He looked at it without dialing. "Lieutenant Commander Warren Holt," he said, 14-year veteran, operations coordinator. "I know who Holt is," Emily said. "He was nominated for a commendation last month," Reyes said. The words came out slowly, like a man reading a sentence he doesn't want to finish. "He's scheduled to brief the Secretary of Defense next week." Emily looked at him steadily. "Pull his log access," she said. "Cross-reference his terminal logins against the compromised timestamps. All 4 events." Reyes sat for a moment without moving. Cole could see the weight of it on him. Not doubt about whether to do it, but the weight of doing it. The particular heaviness of beginning a process that, once started, could not be undone. He dialed. The call was answered on the first ring. Whatever was said on the other end, Reyes listened to it without expression. Then he said, "I need a terminal access audit for Holt, Warren, LC, badge number Alpha 7904. Cross-reference against these 4 dates." He read the dates from Emily's screen. "I need it in 10 minutes. He hung up. Nobody spoke. The laptop fan ran quietly. Somewhere below them, the hospital kept doing what hospitals do, absorbing pain and dispensing care, indifferent to the thing happening in the conference room on the 3rd floor. At 5:02 in the morning, Cole's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed. "It's the ICU," he said. He was already standing. "Avery." Emily was on her feet before he finished the word. She was through the door before he reached it. They took the stairs. Emily hit the ICU door at 5:03, and the first thing she saw was Marcus at the bedside, with the look on his face that she had learned to read in field conditions. Not panic, which was manageable, but the specific, controlled tension of a person holding a situation together by will alone while it threatened to come apart. "V-fib," Marcus said, 30 seconds ago. "I got him back with the first shock. He's in sinus now, but it's not stable." Emily was at the monitor. She read the rhythm. She read the 12 lead. She read the pattern the way she had read the communication logs upstairs. Fast, complete, without commentary. "The magnesium didn't hold," she said. "He needs amiodarone. And someone call cardiology and tell them this is not a 4 a.m. consult anymore. This is a come in right now." "Already called," Marcus said. Cole was at the bedside. He looked at Avery, who was awake. Of course he was awake. He had just been defibrillated. A person does not sleep through that. And who was looking at Emily with an expression that was simultaneously the expression of a very sick man in the expression of a man who is absolutely certain that the person at his bedside is the correct person for this specific situation. "You're still here," Avery said. His voice was rough. "I'm still here," Emily said. "The logs." "Handled," she said. "Focus on breathing." "I am focusing on breathing," he said. "It's not my favorite thing to focus on." "I know," Emily said. She was checking his IV lines, checking the tube position, checking the things that needed checking, her hands moving with an efficiency that had nothing performative in it. "Amiodarone is going in. It's going to feel strange for a few minutes." "Strange how?" "Like your heart is doing something you didn't ask it to do," she said. "It's already doing that," he said. "Stranger," she said. He almost laughed. It came out as something between a laugh and a wince, and she put her hand briefly on his arm. Not a clinical touch, not a vital sign check, just a hand on an arm. The way you touch someone when you want them to know that you are there and you are not going anywhere. Avery looked at her hand, then at her face. "You're going to help him," he said, not a question. She knew he meant Reyes. She knew he meant all of it. The logs, Carter, Holt, the thing that was moving in the dark above them. "I said I'd look at the logs," she said. "Emily," she looked at him. "I know you," he said quietly. "You already know what you're going to do." She said nothing, but she didn't take her hand away from his arm. At 5:19 in the morning, Reyes appeared in the ICU doorway. Emily saw him from across the room. His face told her everything before he spoke a word. It was the face of a man who has just received a confirmation he needed and did not want. She stepped into the corridor. "Holt logged into the operations terminal at 13:52 on the first date," Reyes said, his voice low and very controlled. 13:47 on the second, 14:03 on the third, 14:19 on the fourth. He paused. Every compromise occurred within 30 minutes of his terminal access. Every single time. Emily absorbed this without visible reaction. "Does he know you're running the audit?" "Not yet," Reyes said. "The analyst who ran it is cleared and discreet." He looked at her. "But we have a window, a small one. Once he finds out, and he will find out, these things travel, he will move. He will cover, he will run, or he will accelerate whatever he's running." "How long is the window?" "Hours," Reyes said. "Maybe less." Emily looked at the floor for 1 second, one precise, private second of pure thought. "Then we use it," she said. Reyes looked at her. "What are you thinking?" "Holt thinks Carter is the suspect," Emily said. "He's been building that narrative for months. He thinks he's invisible because Carter is in the way." She looked up at Reyes. "Let him think that for 2 more hours. Feed a false extraction point through Carter's channel, something that looks real, something that Holt would move on. And when he accesses it, we have him in the act," Reyes said. "You have him in the act," Emily said, with a precision that was deliberate. "I'm a nurse. I don't run operations." "You just outlined one," Reyes said quietly. She looked at him. He looked back. They stood in the corridor of a hospital at 5:21 in the morning, and the distance between what she was and what she had been, and what she was being asked to be again, was the exact width of the hallway between them. "I outlined an idea," Emily said. "You run it." Reyes nodded slowly. He picked up his phone. Cole found her at 5:38 in the morning. She was in the family consultation room at the end of the ICU corridor. Not because there was a family to consult, but because it was small and quiet, and the lights could be turned down, and she had been on her feet for more than 10 hours, and she needed 3 minutes that were not pointed at a crisis. He knocked before he came in. She noticed that. He was a man who had not, in her experience, demonstrated a habit of knocking before entering a room. She wasn't sure if that was new or if she was just seeing it more clearly now than she had at the start of the night. "Avery's rhythm is stable," he said. "Cardiology is with him now. Dr. Huang is running the case personally." "Good," Emily said. Cole sat down in the chair across from her. He sat in it the way he rarely sat in chairs. Not at the edge, not with the body language of someone about to stand up, but fully, with his weight in it, like a man who has decided to be somewhere completely. "You should know," he said, "that the story is out. On the floor, I mean. Not the details. Marcus doesn't know the details, and Sandra is discreet. But the fact that you are not who you appeared to be, that's out." Emily looked at him. "How are people responding?" "With complete and total inability to look at you normally," Cole said, "which is to say, they're trying to be professional about it and failing completely." He paused. "Chen from the night pharmacy stopped Marcus in the hall 20 minutes ago to ask if it was true that you had performed surgery in a combat zone. Marcus said he didn't know the specifics. Chen said, and I am quoting directly, that she had always thought there was something different about you." Emily looked at him. "Chen has never spoken to me." "I know," Cole said. "People are remarkable that way." She almost smiled. It was small, the smallest version of a smile, but it was there. And Cole saw it, and something in his face shifted in response, something that he was clearly not aware of doing. "Cole," Emily said. "Daniel," he said. She looked at him. "We've been through enough tonight," he said simply. "Daniel is fine." She considered this. "Daniel," she said, "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "When this is over, whatever this is, whatever happens with Reyes and Avery and the rest of it, I need to come back to work," she said. "Not to a different position, not to a promotion or a new title. I need to come back here, to this floor, to this shift." Cole looked at her for a moment. "You think I was going to try to change that," he said. "I think people tend to decide what's best for you without asking," she said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're right that I was thinking about it," he said. "The talent waste argument, the capability argument. I was building it in my head on the way here." He stopped. "And then I thought about what you said, about choosing to be a person again." He looked at his hands. "I spent 11 years building a reputation in this hospital. The profile, the publications, the record. I built it intentionally. I knew exactly what I was building and why." He paused. "And sitting here right now, at 5:40 in the morning, talking to you, I'm not entirely sure the thing I built is the same as the thing I am." Emily looked at him. It was a long look. The kind of look that a person gives when they are seeing someone clearly, without the overlay of first impressions or prior judgments. "You listened," she said, "in the trauma bay. I know it cost you something, and you listened anyway. That matters." "It shouldn't have cost anything," he said. "That's the point." "No," she said, "but it did. And you did it anyway." She paused. "That's not nothing." He sat with that for a moment. Then his pager went off. He looked at it. He stood up. "Avery's requesting to speak with you," he said. "Apparently he told Huang to tell me to find you because he was concerned you might have found somewhere quiet to exist, and he didn't want to bother you directly." "He was concerned about bothering me," Emily said. "Apparently," Cole said. She stood. She put the armband, which she had been holding without realizing she was holding it, back in her pocket. "Tell Patricia I'll be there in 2 minutes." Cole nodded. He started toward the door. Then he stopped. "Brooks," he said, then corrected himself. "Emily," he turned around. "For the record, I was wrong this morning. About you. About how I spoke to you, how I dismissed you, how I put my hands on you. It was wrong. In every way." He met her eyes. "I want to say that clearly, not in a corridor at 4 a.m., but here, in a room, awake, with full knowledge of what I'm saying." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "I know," she said, "and I accept it." He nodded once. He walked out. She stood in the quiet room for one more moment. She looked at the wall. She thought about 11 years, and about 3 months, and about the weight of a combat armband that was worn at the edges because it had been worn in places where the edges of things wore down fast. Then she walked out. At 6:07 in the morning, Avery told her something she had not been expecting. She was at his bedside. His rhythm was stable, the amiodarone had done its work, and Dr. Kwong had the case in hand with the quiet authority of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and did not need an audience. The room was calmer than it had been at any point in the previous 2 hours. "Carter knows you're here," Avery said. Emily went still. "What?" "He called me 20 minutes ago," Avery said. His voice was controlled, but underneath the control was something urgent. "On my personal cell, which is in the property bag, which the nursing staff accessed to give me my insurance card on intake." Emily looked at him. "Someone from this floor accessed your property bag and told Carter you were admitted." "Someone accessed my bag," Avery said. "I don't know who told Carter, but he knows I'm at Harrove. He knows the floor." He paused. "He didn't know about you, but if he's already accessed my intake information, he'll find the admitting nurse's name," Emily said. Her voice was very quiet. "Yes," Avery said. She straightened. She looked at the door. She looked back at Avery. "Does Reyes know Carter called?" "I told Reyes 4 minutes ago," Avery said. "He's adjusting the operation." He met her eyes. "Emily, if Carter identifies you before Reyes can close the window—" "I know," she said. "He's not just a leaker," Avery said. "He's been running active interference on this team for 8 months. He is not—" He stopped. His jaw tightened. "He is not a person who will hesitate." The room was very quiet. Emily looked at James Avery, at the chest tube and the cardiac leads, in the face of a man who had trusted her with his life twice in one night and was asking her now to understand the full weight of what that trust was costing. She put her hand in her pocket. She felt the armband. She took it out. She looked at it for a moment, at the embroidered call sign, at the worn edges, at the thing that it was and the thing that it meant, and the distance between the person who had earned it and the person she had been trying to be for 3 months. She turned it over once, then she put it on her left wrist. It fit exactly as it always had. Avery looked at her wrist. He looked at her face. Something moved through his expression, something that was not relief and not grief, but was the specific feeling that lives between the two, the feeling of watching something true reassert itself. "Fox Actual," he said quietly. "Don't push it," Emily said. She walked out of the room. In the corridor, Sandra was waiting. She looked at Emily's wrist. She looked at the armband. She looked at Emily's face, and whatever she found there made her stand slightly straighter. "What do you need?" Sandra said. "I need you to pull every access log for Avery's property bag from the moment he was admitted," Emily said. "Every person who signed in and out, time-stamped." Sandra was already moving toward the station. "How fast?" "Yesterday," Emily said. She kept walking down the corridor, and the way she walked had changed. Or perhaps it had not changed. Perhaps this was simply the walk that had been there all along, beneath 3 months of deliberate invisibility, now visible because the decision had been made, and the armband was on, and there was no more point in being small. At the far end of the corridor, Cole was coming toward her. He saw her face. He saw her wrist. He stopped. She stopped. They looked at each other. "Carter knows I'm here," she said. Cole processed this in about 1 second flat. "What do you need from me?" "Lockdown protocol on Avery's room," she said. "No visitors without my clearance. Nobody in the property room without Sandra present. And I need you to trust me for the next 2 hours with no questions." Cole looked at her for one long, quiet moment. The man who had told her to get out of his trauma bay 9 hours ago, who had grabbed her wrist and used his voice like a weapon and dismissed everything she was. That man stood in the corridor and looked at this woman with a combat armband on her wrist and said, "You've had my trust since 4:30, he said. "You just didn't know it yet." Emily looked at him. Then she nodded. once, short, the nod of a person receiving information that is useful and moving on. She turned left at the corridor junction. She was already reaching for her phone, because somewhere in this building, someone had made a phone call they should not have made. And somewhere outside it, a man named Carter was moving toward a hospital in Chicago with the specific, quiet purpose of a person who has been doing dangerous things long enough that they no longer look dangerous doing them. And Emily Brooks, Fox Actual, was not going to be caught standing still. Sandra found the name in 4 minutes. 4 minutes was all it took to pull the property bag access log, cross-reference it against the shift roster, and arrive at a name that made her sit very still at the nurse's station for a moment before she picked up the phone and called Emily directly. "Briggs," Sandra said. "Kevin Briggs, night orderly. He accessed the property room at 2:51 a.m., signed in under routine inventory check. Avery's bag was the only one he touched." Emily was already on the second floor when the call came in. She stopped walking. "Where is Briggs now?" "I don't know," Sandra said. "He's not on the floor. I checked the break room, the supply corridor, the east stairwell. His badge hasn't swiped anything since 3:04. "Pull his emergency contact," Emily said. "Don't call it, just pull it and send it to me." She paused. "And Sandra, don't mention his name to anyone except Cole. Not to Marcus, not to the floor staff, nobody." "Understood," Sandra said. Emily put the phone in her pocket. She turned around and went back the way she had come. Because the stairwell at the south end of the building was faster than the elevator, and she had learned a long time ago that fast and quiet were not opposites. They were the same thing, deployed correctly. Reyes met her at the third-floor landing. He had clearly been moving too, and he had the look of a man who had received 3 pieces of bad information in rapid succession and was organizing them into a response in real time. "Carter is in the city," he said. "My contact at O'Hare confirmed his flight landed at 5:40. He used a civilian name, but the biometric flag caught him." He looked at her. "He's 40 minutes out, maybe less if he takes a car." "He'll take a car," Emily said. "He doesn't take transit when he's moving on an objective. It limits his exit options." She kept walking. "Briggs accessed the property bag. He's gone dark on the floor." Reyes fell into step beside her. "Briggs is one of Carter's assets?" "Has to be," Emily said. "Carter wouldn't drive to a Chicago hospital at 6 in the morning on information from a stranger. He had someone here already." She pushed through the stairwell door into the third-floor corridor, which means Carter has been running this layer for a while. Local assets in civilian institutions, feeding him information on people the command doesn't know, are being watched. Reyes was quiet for 2 steps. "How many people do you think he has?" "I don't know," Emily said. "But if he has one in this building, he has others in other buildings. That's how he operates." She said it with the flat certainty of someone who is not guessing. "Carter doesn't take risks he hasn't already minimized. He would not have a single asset. He would have coverage." Reyes looked at her profile as they walked. "You know him," he said. "I know the type," Emily said. And something in her voice said that was all she was going to offer on that subject. And Reyes, who knew when to push and when not to, did not push. They reached Cole's office. Cole was inside, on the phone, and he ended the call the moment they came through the door with an abruptness that told Emily he had been waiting for them. "Security has been briefed," Cole said. "I told Dominguez we have a potential, unauthorized visitor inbound, possible threat to a patient. He's positioning people at the main entrance and the east access." He looked at Emily. "Is that right? Is that what we're dealing with?" "Yes," Emily said, "but tell Dominguez to keep them plain-clothed and non-obvious. If Carter sees a security presence the moment he walks in, he won't walk in. He'll go around." Cole picked up his phone and relayed this without comment. No argument, no second-guessing. Emily noticed it and filed it away. The way a person files away things that matter, things that tell you who someone is when the pressure is real. "There's something else," Cole said, when he put the phone down. He said, which means he knows that whatever Avery knows, I now know too. She paused. So Avery is a loose end, but I'm the active problem. Yes, Cole said. Okay, Emily said. Cole stared at her. Okay. I'm not surprised, she said, and it doesn't change the plan. It just clarifies the priority. Emily, Reyes said carefully, the plan was to use the false extraction point to catch Holt in the act. Carter coming here is a separate. It's not separate, Emily said. Holt and Carter are running parallel tracks of the same operation. If Carter is moving now, it means Holt is moving too, which means our window just got shorter. She looked at Reyes. Did you send the false extraction point through Carter's channel? 20 minutes ago, Reyes said. Then Holt has already seen it, Emily said. He's already deciding whether to act on it. If Carter reaches this building before Holt accesses the point, Carter will warn him and the whole operation folds. She looked at them both. We need to keep Carter outside for 45 minutes. That's all. 45 minutes and Reyes has Holt. Cole looked at her. How do you keep a trained operator outside a building without alerting him that you're keeping him outside? Emily almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. You give him something to pay attention to that isn't the door, she said. At 6:44 in the morning, Kevin Briggs was found. He was in the hospital's loading dock on the ground floor, sitting against the wall with his phone in his hands and the specific expression of a man who has done something and is now waiting to find out the consequences. When Emily came around the corner with Cole 2 steps behind her, Briggs looked up and something crossed his face. Not surprise, but the particular collapse of a person whose last remaining option has just been removed. He was 26. Young face, tired eyes, the body language of someone who had been carrying something heavy for a while and was exhausted by it. Emily sat down on a supply crate across from him. She did not loom over him. She did not put authority into her posture. She simply sat, at his level, the way she had sat at Avery's bedside, with the full weight of her attention on the person in front of her and nothing performative about any of it. Kevin, she said. Briggs looked at her. He looked at her name badge. He looked at her wrist, at the armband. His throat worked. How long has he had you? Emily asked. Briggs looked at the floor. Kevin. Her voice did not harden. It stayed exactly what it was. I'm not here to destroy you. I need to understand what he has on you, and I need to understand it right now, because the man who recruited you is in a car headed to this building, and when he gets here, you are going to be standing between him and an outcome that is very bad for everyone in this hospital. Briggs looked up. His eyes were red. He was 26 years old, and whatever he had gotten into, you could see on his face that it had not been chosen lightly and had not felt simple the moment it started feeling wrong. My brother, he said. His voice cracked slightly. My brother is in the service. Carter he has something on my brother. He told me if I didn't. He stopped. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth for a moment. Then, I just pulled a bag. That was all I did. I just told him who was admitted. I know, Emily said. I know that was all you did. She leaned forward slightly. Did Carter tell you why he wanted the information? He said it was a routine check on a priority asset, Briggs said. He said it was sanctioned. Did you believe him? Briggs looked at his hands. No, he said quietly, but I didn't know how to. He stopped again. Cole, standing behind Emily, said nothing. His jaw was tight in a way that Emily recognized. Not anger at Briggs, but the anger of a man watching someone very young be crushed by a machine that was much too large for them. Your brother's name, Emily said. Give it to me. Briggs stared at her. What? Your brother's name, she said again. Branch and unit if you know it. Briggs told her. His voice was very quiet. Emily looked at Reyes, who had appeared in the loading dock doorway without anyone noticing him arrive, as was apparently simply how Reyes moved through spaces. Reyes gave a short nod. He stepped back into the corridor, phone already to his ear. Emily looked at Briggs. Whatever Carter has on your brother, it ends today. Not because I'm promising you a favor, because the people Carter works with are going to prison, and the material they use for leverage goes with them. She stood up. Stay here. Don't use your phone. Don't talk to anyone except Cole. She looked at Cole. He nodded. She walked past him toward the door. Wait, Briggs said. She turned. Is my brother okay? Briggs asked. Emily looked at him for a moment, at the face of a 26-year-old kid who had gotten crushed between things that had nothing to do with him and had done the only thing he could see to protect the person he loved. Yes, she said. He's okay. She went through the door. At 7:03 in the morning, Carter entered the building. He came through the main entrance, civilian clothes, a jacket that fit a certain way across the shoulders, the walk of a man who was comfortable in public spaces because he had spent years learning to look unremarkable. He told the front desk he was visiting a patient. He gave a name that was not James Avery, but was the name of a real patient on the 4th floor, someone whose admission information he had obviously obtained through Briggs or another channel. He was given a visitor sticker. He thanked the receptionist with a smile. He walked past the bank of elevators. He took the stairs. He was on the 2nd floor when his phone buzzed. He looked at it. He stopped on the landing. He read whatever was on the screen, and something in his posture shifted. A very small shift, almost imperceptible. The kind of shift that happens when a person who has been moving towards something suddenly isn't sure the thing is still where they left it. He typed a response. He waited. The response came back in 40 seconds. He read it. He typed again. He was standing on the 2nd floor landing with his phone in his hand when the stairwell door opened above him and Emily came through it. She came down the stairs at a normal pace, not rushed, not slow. The pace of a nurse who is moving between floors on a regular shift, which is what she appeared to be. She was in her scrubs with her badge visible and her hands at her sides, and the only thing that was not entirely consistent with that appearance was the combat armband on her left wrist, which Carter saw immediately. He saw it. His eyes went to it, then to her face, then back to the armband. He went very still. Emily kept coming down the stairs. She stopped on the landing 2 steps above him, which put them nearly at eye level, and she looked at him the way she had looked at Cole in the trauma bay 12 hours ago. Square, direct, without theater. Michael, she said. Carter looked at her. His face was doing the thing faces do when a person is running very fast calculations behind their eyes. Emily Brooks, he said. His voice was careful, controlled. I heard you were here. I know you did, she said. You heard it 45 minutes ago when Briggs pulled Avery's property bag. And you heard something else about 20 minutes ago through Holt's channel that made you drive a little faster. Carter's expression did not change, but his weight shifted, just slightly, the weight of a man measuring his options. How's Avery? He said. He's going to be fine, Emily said. Good, Carter said. That's good. He said it smoothly, the way a person says something that is supposed to sound genuine and has learned to produce the correct tone without the correct feeling. I was worried when I heard he'd been admitted. I know you were, Emily said. You've been managing Avery for 8 months. Losing him would be a significant operational problem. The careful, neutral expression on Carter's face tightened by a fraction. I don't know what you think The terminal logs, Emily said. Holtz accessed timestamps against the 4 compromised extraction points. Reyes has them. He's had them since 5 a.m. She watched Carter's face. And the false extraction point that went through your channel at 6:25, the one you just received confirmation on from Holt, the one that made you drive faster. Holt accessed that point 11 minutes ago from his home terminal. It's being recorded in real time. Silence on the stairwell landing. Carter looked at her. Something had gone out of his face. The careful smoothness, the management. What was left underneath was not what Emily had expected. It was not the face of a man calculating escape routes. It was the face of a man who is very, very tired. "You've been doing this for 8 months," Emily said. Her voice was not loud. It was not triumphant. It was the voice of a person stating a true thing to someone who knows it's true and doesn't need it dressed up. "Men on your team. Men who trusted you." Carter said nothing. "Why?" Emily said. The words sat between them on the landing. Simple, direct. Not an accusation, because Emily had learned a long time ago that accusation closes doors, and she wanted this one open. Carter looked at the wall. He looked at his hands. He looked at the armband on her wrist. "Because they were going to get us all killed anyway," he said. The words came out slowly, with the specific quality of things that have been held for a long time and have changed shape from the holding. 3 ops in 18 months, Emily. 3 ops where the intelligence was bad and the planning was worse, and we went in anyway because someone in a briefing room decided the window was right. I lost 4 men in 14 months. He stopped. 4 men. His jaw was tight. In every debrief, every review board, every single time the conclusion was the same. Executed within parameters. Acceptable outcome. He looked at her. Acceptable. Emily held his gaze. "So you decided to sell them out to avoid being sold out," she said. "I decided..." He stopped. He started again. "I decided that if the command structure was going to spend our lives like currency, I was going to make sure I had some of my own." "And the men whose extraction points you burned," Emily said quietly, "were their lives currency too?" The question landed exactly where she had aimed it. Carter's face did not collapse. He was too trained for that. But something behind it did. Something that had been held together by the logic he had built, the justification he had constructed over 8 months, took a very quiet, very significant hit. He didn't answer. "Michael," Emily said, "I know what it costs to lose people. I know exactly what it costs. I left the service because of what it cost me." She paused. "But the answer to a broken system is not to break the people inside it." Carter looked at her for a long moment. The stairwell was quiet. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up. They could both feel it, the distant accumulation of movement and noise that a city makes when it starts its day, indifferent to the things happening in the quiet spaces inside its buildings. "They're already outside," Carter said. Not a question. "Yes," Emily said. He nodded slowly, the smallest nod, the nod of a man closing an account. "Avery's really going to be okay?" he said. "Yes," Emily said. He looked at the armband one more time, then he put his phone in his pocket. He turned toward the stairwell door. "I'll go down," he said. He went down. At 7:41 in the morning, Reyes called. Emily was in the ICU corridor when she answered, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed, and the specific exhaustion of a person who has been holding a great deal of tension for a very long time and has just been given permission to set it down. "Holt is in custody," Reyes said. "Access the false point at 6:52, triggered the trace. Federal agents picked him up at his residence at 7:38. A pause. "It's over." Emily opened her eyes. "Carter?" she said. "Cooperating," Reyes said. "Fully. He started talking in the lobby before they had him in the car." Another pause. "Emily, the 4 men he identified as compromised, Carter's testimony clears 3 of them. The 4th was Holt's direct recruit. Carter didn't know about him until this morning." Emily absorbed this. "Briggs's brother," she said. "Is fine," Reyes said. "I made the call at 6:40. Whatever Carter had on him has been classified and sealed. The kid has a clean record as of this morning." Emily was quiet for a moment. The corridor hummed around her. Monitors, footsteps, the ordinary ongoing work of a hospital keeping people alive. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," Reyes said. "Thank whoever outlined the operation at 4:30 in the morning in a hospital conference room." A brief pause. "Emily, the offer stands. Whatever form it takes, whatever capacity, whatever terms you name, Tom, she said. I know, he said. I know, but it stands. She didn't answer that. They both understood why. Take care of yourself, she said. You too, Commander, he said. She ended the call. At 8:15 in the morning, she went to see Avery. He was awake and had been for a while, according to the night nurse's note, had been awake since before 6, which, given everything that had been happening 6 floors above him, was either a coincidence or the instinct of a man whose body had learned to stay alert when things were moving. He looked at her when she came in. He looked at her face and at her posture and at the armband, and he did what he always did. He read her completely and accurately in about 3 seconds. It's done, he said. It's done, she said. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was something in them that was quieter than anything she had seen from him all night. Something that was not relief exactly, but was what lives on the other side of relief. The specific, exhausted peace of a thing finally finished. Carter, he said. Cooperating, she said. He'll face charges, but he's talking. Avery nodded. He looked at the ceiling. 4 men, he said quietly. He lost 4 men, and he snapped. He paused. I understand it. I don't forgive it, but I understand it. I know, Emily said. Do you? He looked at her. Because you lost people too, and you didn't. I left, Emily said. You left clean, he said. That's different. She sat down in the chair at his bedside, the same chair from hours ago, in the same room. But everything about the air in it was different now. The urgency was gone. What was left was the particular quiet of people who have been through something together and are now on the other side of it, taking stock. Reyes is going to keep asking, Avery said. I know, she said, and you're going to keep saying no. She looked at him. I'm a nurse, James. I know you are, he said. I watched you be a nurse all night. I watched you save the man in Bay 3, and I watched you manage my case, and I watched you run an operation that took down 2 traitors from an ICU. He met her eyes. You're a nurse, and you are also everything else you've ever been. Those things don't cancel each other out. Emily looked at him for a long moment. The armband sat on her left wrist, worn and real and completely itself. I'll consult, she said finally. The word was careful, deliberate, the word of a person drawing a line they are willing to honor. If Reyes needs pattern analysis, communication review, field medical assessment on specific cases, I'll consult. Remotely. On my terms. She paused. But I come back here, to this floor, to this shift. That doesn't change. Avery looked at her. Something moved across his face. Something that was not quite a smile, and not quite not a smile. The expression of a man who knows he is not getting everything he hoped for, and is deciding that what he is getting is enough. On your terms, he said. On my terms, she said. He reached out his hand. Not the gesture of a superior officer to a subordinate. Not a handshake of transaction. The gesture of one person to another, across the specific shared ground of everything they had been through, and everything they both understood about the cost of this work, and the weight of choosing it freely. Emily looked at his hand, then she took it. They sat like that for a moment, in the quiet of the ICU, the monitors running their steady rhythm, the morning coming through and the sounds of the building shifting from night staff to day staff. The ordinary miracle of a place that keeps people alive continuing to perform itself. Cole found her at the nurse's station at 8:47 in the morning. She was doing what she had been doing for 3 months, charting, quietly, precisely, with the small, efficient movements of a person who has made their peace with the work in front of them. The night shift was ending. The day staff was coming in. The ordinary choreography of hospital transition was unfolding around her the way it always did. He sat down across from her. He did not say anything for a moment. Day shift wants to know if you're staying on to brief them on Avery's case, he said finally. I'll stay for handoff, Emily said. 30 minutes. Cole nodded. He looked at her for a moment. Patricia Huang is requesting you be formally added to Avery's care team for the duration of his admission, he said. She put it in writing. I've never seen Patricia put anything in writing before 9 a.m. I'll talk to her, Emily said. Cole was quiet again. He had the quality of a man who has something to say and is taking his time finding the right shape for it. There's going to be talk, he said, in the hospital, about last night, about you. I know, Emily said. Some of it will be reverent, he said, in a way that might be difficult. People will adjust, she said. And some of it will be stupid, he said. People who want to make you into something symbolic, a story. Emily looked up from her chart. She looked at him directly. I'm a nurse, she said. I'm a nurse who had a very long shift. People can make whatever they want out of that. It doesn't change what I am. Cole looked at her for a long moment. The man who had begun this night by pointing his finger at her and ordering her out of his trauma bay was sitting across from her at 8:47 in the morning, and whatever he was now, whatever this night had made of him, whatever Emily Brooks had quietly and without any intention of doing so, dismantled and rebuilt in his understanding of himself, was visibly different from what he had been. You know, he said, for what it's worth, this place is better for having you in it. He said it without drama, without the inflection of a compliment, simply as a true thing, stated plainly. Emily looked at him. She nodded once. Do better by the next one, she said. Cole understood immediately. The next nurse. The next person whose credentials he would not examine before dismissing. The next quiet, invisible person in a room who might be seeing something no one else was seeing. I will, he said. She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she went back to the chart. The morning shift at Harrove Medical Center arrived the way it always did, in increments, coffee cups and badge swipes, and the particular noise of a building returning to full volume after the quieter hours of the night. People came in, reports were given, beds were checked. The machinery of care resumed its daytime pace, and Emily Brooks, night shift nurse, third month at Harrove, sat at the nurse's station and finished her charting with the worn armband on her wrist and the work of the night behind her. The saved lives and the caught men and the hard conversations and the moment on the stairwell landing when she had looked Michael Carter in the face and asked him why. Not because she expected an answer that would satisfy, but because she believed that people deserved to be asked. She had not set out to be a hero. She had not set out to be anything other than what she had chosen. She had come to this hospital to disappear into the quiet dignity of daily care, to save one patient at a time with no call sign, no rank, no history that anyone needed to know about. What she had found instead was that you cannot amputate what you are. You can set it aside. You can choose a different expression of it. You can walk into a different room and close a door. But the thing itself, the capacity, the instinct, the bone-deep understanding of what to do when someone in front of you is dying and no one else is moving, that does not go away. It waits. And when the moment comes, it answers. She filed the last chart. She capped her pen. She looked down at the armband one time, the way you look at something that is real and present in yours. Then she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked out to give her handoff report, because the day shift was waiting, and there were patients to be seen, and the work, as always, continued. She was Fox Actual. She was Emily Brooks. She was a nurse. And in that room, on that floor, in that city, all three of those things were exactly the same.